Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll give everyone a few minutes to come in, get a cup of coffee.
It's lunchtime for some of us.
Yes, it is
Yeah,
lunchtime.
true.
Lunch, yeah.
And if you're in the Bay Area, you may be sweltering from this somehow October heat wave that's going on.
I've heard about that.
It's insane.
I somehow escaped. I live in San Francisco and I left Tuesday to come down to Southern California, and it's like 70 degrees here and it's 90 in San Francisco. Like
Crazy.
wow.
the world is
Oh
upside
my
down.
gosh, the world is upside down. You got lucky.
Maybe
Really
while
did.
we're
You, Andrew, right? You are in the Bay Area as well?
Yeah, I'm in the Bay. I'm in the East Bay.
Yeah.
I was just on with a coaching mentoring client this morning who's in Florida, though. The hurricane came through, and he showed me a photo of a boat that had washed up in his backyard.
Into the street or into the back. Oh my
goodness.
gosh.
In his backyard, in the
Wow.
pool. There's like a giant boat in his backyard.
Wow. Well, while we're waiting, just we'll give people a minute or two. But for those that are with us, want to just pop in the chat where you're from, since anybody in Florida, is everybody okay?
Florida, Western North Carolina, some parts of
Oh,
Georgia.
gosh.
If
Yeah.
everybody's
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
Baltimore, nice. Got some East Coast here. Got some more Bay Area folks. Nebraska. All right. That's awesome. I love Lincoln. The Cabela's there is amazing. Austin. Has anybody been to the Cabela's in Lincoln? It's great. It's massive. You can go fishing in a store. Toronto. All right, amazing.
Okay. Go Canada.
Fantastic. Love it.
Anaheim, not too far from me.
Yeah. Excellent. Oh, Italy. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, it's late there. I hope you have like a glass of wine in your hand and are
Those from Italy. That's wonderful. I just
nice.
returned from Milan and it was one of the best trips I've had in a long, long time.
So great. Oh, Florida, I hope you're okay. Wonderful. Thanks for joining, Jackie. Got some Austin representation today.
That's
Excellent.
Natalie. She's on my team.
6
Oh,
p.m.
really? Aw, thanks, Nat. I recognize that name. Hi, Natalie.
Yeah, that's Nat.
That's awesome. All right. Woohoo. Okay. That's awesome. All right, wonderful. Well, let's get started. My name is Lindsay Niels. I'm the co-founder of Elevate Leadership, and I am incredibly excited about our topic today around how do we make sure that when we launch a people program, we are launching it for success. It's sticky, it moves the needle in the way we want it to do too, and it lasts. And we have we've been fortunate over the years to launch hundreds of people programs when it comes to management training. But I just want to recognize for a second that whether you're launching, whether it's performance reviews, whether it's comp, whether it's management training, when you launch a people program, it is so public, it's so visible, and you really put yourself on stage. And so I just want to recognize that for a moment, for the bravery that is with us. And that's also why I'm so excited to pull together such an esteemed group of panelists who have an immense amount of experience to do everything we can to make your time useful today, to set you up for success, and impart some of that wisdom from who we have here today. So without further ado, I will welcome our esteemed guests. So I'm really happy to have Jonna here. Jonna is the VP of Employee Success at Sistig. And from what I can tell, that means she wears every hat. And before that, Jonna was at Cohesity, and we've been spoiled to get to work with her for quite a few years now at both companies. And when this topic came up as a topic we wanted to run, you were the first name that popped into our head. This is definitely your zone of genius. So
thank you.
Thank you for coming. And anything I missed on your background or anything you want to share in terms of like what makes you so passionate or excited about this topic?
No, just, I mean, really, so much of the work that teams that I've been leading over the last about 6 years, so much of that work has been around designing, delivering, driving adoption, measuring impact of key people programs. And of course, the design implies that you've already gotten buy-in. So you've had to build a business case, you've had to tie it to company metrics, you've had to, so this is just super near and dear to my heart. And it's what my team is doing day in, day out. And just a little plug for Sysdig, awesome, incredible cloud-based security company in San Francisco, but also huge presence globally. And thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this and learning along with you all.
Wonderful. Excellent. Thanks. Okay, now I'm excited to introduce Andrew. So Andrew comes with a wealth of experience. And just to give a little bit of color as to what I mean when I say that, Andrew has been, what are we on? Like, you've been a CHRO 5, 6 times now?
But
something.
who's counting?
But who's counting? That's right. But who's counting? Yeah. And then Andrew also runs a People Accelerator program. So he really helps HR leaders who are at VC-backed companies really set them up for success. And I wonder, actually, if you're an alum of a People Accelerator program, say hello in the chat. Do we have any alum here? Maybe. If not, you should. Oh, yay, Jenny. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Please, by all means, check it out, though. It's really a phenomenal program. And then the other thing that Andrew does is he is a partner at Ultimate Capital. So he's also within the private equity later stage space, and he's helping to advise HR leaders within their portfolio companies. So whether you're at a small company, a large company, a public company, a VC-backed company, or a private equity company, Andrew has been there. And so I'm excited just because he just really can relate to anything that you might be sitting in. So anyway, anything I missed in that incredible background, Andrew?
Oh my goodness, you just call me old. I've
No,
done
no, stop.
and we talked about it before we started. Girl dad. I have 2 daughters that will probably not be on camera today.
Oh man. Wonderful. And then I'd love to introduce Brittany, and this is with great pride because Brittany is one of our own, if you will. Brittany runs customer success at Elevate. And so she really partners with our clients and becomes an extension of the team, helping launch those programs, keeping them sticky and making sure that they are built to last and to scale. And Brittany started way back in the day at Stripe when there were like 2 people on the people team.
Yeah,
so
there's very few.
Very few, right? So Brittany really, she has worn all the hats. So whether it was employee experience, employee engagement, L&D, like she's been there, and she's also been there from an operating perspective. So the get it factor is strong, and she's just a very incredible systems thinker. So, and Brittany was actually the one who brought up this topic. So Brittany, anything I missed that you want to share, or anything that you wanted to share about sort of the origin of bringing up this great idea to do this panel?
Yeah, I think one of the things, since I work with so many of our clients, a lot of the conversations I have are how to communicate these programs, how to make sure you get people to adopt them, to make them sticky, to speak the same language, and to not make it feel like we are HR trying to get you to do something, but make them feel like empowered and want to do it as well.
Amazing. Great. Okay, so just a bit of tradition at Elevate. We love an icebreaker. So I hope the audience will participate too. And then we'll dive in, I promise. Okay, so if you had to wear one t-shirt every day for a year, what would your t-shirt say? So please, everyone pop your answer in the chat. And let's see what t-shirt. Great, thanks, Mary, for repeating that icebreaker. Okay, does anybody have an idea as to what they would say? Anyone want to go?
I have 2.
Oh,
no, go ahead.
Okay, so okay, 2. Okay, because I was going to say I'm accustomed to changing my shirt every day, so this is a really big commitment to keep this shirt on. So
you wash your
you really got to resonate with the message here. And it's a little bit of cheating. It's not a shirt that I currently own, but I saw it on somebody, and I'm going to get it now. And nice. The shirt reads, "Hold my drink. I gotta pet this dog." And that's essentially because I always have a drink, which is mostly either coffee or water. You know, my colleagues on Zoom constantly seeing that, or wine in the evening. But I do have a strong reflex to meet and say hi to dogs when they cross my path in the universe.
Love that. I love that. Thank you. All right, Brittany, you have
Love
two.
that.
You live in San Francisco.
I have
You go for the
two.
layered look. Let's hear it.
Yes, absolutely. So one serious, one jokey. Your anxiety is lying to you is one of my favorite sayings. I think everybody probably could use that reminder. And then cat mom, because I have two and I am obsessed with them. So I also need to have like the pet connection on this t-shirt.
Oh, nice.
Ideally the photo of my pet, my cats. That would be great.
Excellent. Love it. Andrew?
I dropped into chat. I'd wear a Chicago Cubs t-shirt. I'm originally from the Midwest, lived all over, but mostly Illinois. A long suffering fan. They finally won a World Series a little while back. And I probably did wear that t-shirt more days in a row than I should admit to.
Sounds like if I made a t-shirt for you, it might say loyal.
Yeah,
Loyal.
it might say wash me also.
It might say wash
Yeah.
me. Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Okay, excellent. Well, thanks for sharing. And there are some really fun ones in the chat. Love it. Excellent. Okay, so we want to make sure that we had a prep call, and I was just amazed by the wealth of ideas and strategies and tactics that came out. So I want to make sure that we're tailoring the conversation today to make the most of our audience's time. So to that end, I'm going to just put a poll out there, and please engage, because we'll then tailor what we're going to share based on that. So I'm going to launch this now. And the question is, what brought you to this webinar? And another way to say is like, what challenge are you facing right now? So maybe it's that you are launching a program really soon here and you want to make sure you get it right, or that you've struggled in the past to make it successful, whether that's adoption or to get leadership support. You just want to make sure that the program stays sticky. Or just like demonstrating the business impact. And if there's something else, yeah, please add it to the chat and we will do our best to get to it. So I'll give you another second. I'm very curious as to what this has to say. Don't worry, I will share it. I won't just keep it to myself. All right, they're still coming in. Dun, dun, dun. Still coming in, otherwise I would end it. I know the suspense. Okay. Excellent. I'm going to end the poll now and let's see what we have. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so we have, let's see here. Okay, so the majority, just by a nudge, is launching a program soon and want to get it right. Okay, great. Well, this will be highly relevant then. Perfect. Okay, so that's our leading and maybe our second top one that they're quite close. Not sure how to demonstrate the business impact of the program. Yep, super important. We can definitely chat about that. And we'll try to get to the others as well. Okay, so about to launch a program. Let's see. Jonna, you want to kick us off? What like if you, I mean, given how many programs you've launched, if you were about to launch a program, what would you be thinking about? What would you want to make sure that you know, based on your experience, you would say, let's make sure you do these things. What would they be?
Yeah. Yep.
Or at least one. You can pick one thing.
Well, I'll share, and then maybe
Great. Yeah, please.
Andrew and they could pile on to my piece, right? So,
Right.
but you said it earlier, these programs are so visible, and especially if we are running something company-wide across the globe, there's a lot of eyes on this from leadership all the way down through to the employee in many cases. So from just over the last several years, I'm a long time HR business partner and was like entrenched with the business for many years. Going into startups, you don't get to just sequester yourself in the business partner land. You have to do all these big programs. And it's been fun. And I've loved that part of being in a startup. And over those last few years, I've sort of kind of come with a methodology around kind of like, you've got to define the thing first, right? Get clear on the purpose, get clear on the objectives. What are you trying to achieve? Make sure you're getting that executive interlock early on in terms of what would success look like and what are some of the things that will be outcomes out of this initiative that positively affect their business metrics, right?
Mhm.
Because we have to make it tied to things that they care about and things that they measure themselves against. And in HR, we can absolutely do that. It's not always exactly low-hanging fruit, but we can do that because retention and attrition are huge drivers of business health, and we have a big play in that. So defining, and then the planning piece, right? Like getting the scope clear, figuring out all the stakeholders, different stakeholder groups, right? And you might have some resistors from a change management perspective that you're going to go and address a little bit differently, or you might be pulling some of those potential resistors in to help you co-create, if you will, because if they can feel like they're part of shaping it, then they might be more apt to align, adopt, and maybe even evangelize if they get into it. So after the plan is like the design, you got to design the thing, right? You got to start building. Now, sometimes we buy, you either build it or you buy it, but maybe that's the build by choice. And then there's the promote it, you got to tell everybody about it, and you have to enable it. So if it's something that people require some education, you're not only sharing it, giving awareness, making people excited about it. If it's something like, here's a new process, or here's a new performance management initiative, or a new career development process we're implementing, you have to enable managers and employees, sometimes separately if the roles are different. And then it's like the launch, right? And stay close to your stakeholders as you launch, be managing it closely, be watching it, be checking on early adoption and any issues that are cropping up so you can address them again early and often. And then the measure. So I kind of just laid out this whole, because they're not only visible, they're super complex. I feel like you need a methodology to go through.
I love that framework. Super helpful. Yeah. Maybe just to sort of double click on the different phases, right? When you started out, you said, okay, well, what's the goal, right? What's the objective? What's the outcome we're driving towards? Andrew, I presume, given your experience and also just like operating in the private equity world a little bit, sometimes you have to really be quite proficient at articulating that business outcome, right? And really connecting those dots. Do you have any advice on like how do you actually go about that? Like, what's a really, how to make that super practical?
Yeah. Well, the core question around how to make a program successful is have the right program. Ensure that it actually solves a priority or goal for the business. So, rather than running around with a solution and then trying to connect it back in some kind of awkward logic leap sort of way to a business metric, actually truly start with the business metric that you're trying to drive and then figure out what the right solution is for that. So how to tie something to the business metric? It's by starting with the business metric rather than starting with your favorite solution.
Yeah.
So that means it's just naturally connected because the goal is driving the solution rather than the other way around.
Yep. Love that. Do any of you have an example of when you've launched something and you've genuinely started that way? Or okay, well, here's the KR for the company. And so I'm gonna, if that's my North Star, then sort of backing into then the program as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, I can share.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, please.
Yeah.
Just want to make that come alive for people because it's so important.
One of my last in-house roles, the organization was clamoring for development and career growth. Hey, tell us how to get promoted and what the next role is. I was working to drive the productivity of our workforce. I actually reported into the COO at the time, and the COO had 80-90% of the organization that worked under their group, and so I was trying to reduce the time to ramp up for new hires. I was trying to optimize productivity through efficiency of the workforce. I was working on all this stuff, but the core business metric, what actually drove our profitability, was capital efficiency, which, in a real estate business, that means capital markets, how much we were able to borrow to then buy houses, and a 0.1% interest drove more impact than a 50% productivity improvement for our entire workforce. So I found out that actually bringing on board a junior capital markets associate from investment banking, it was a team of 3. I found out that bringing on board somebody in a key role was more important than all the work that me and my entire team were doing through the larger organization. once we understood that what we're trying to drive is profitability,
Mhm.
not projects, not
Mhm.
necessarily serve the largest group or serve the greatest demand. We're trying to serve the bottom line. And
Mhm.
so what we needed to do was improve our capital efficiency. And that meant like go recruit a capital markets associate. And that had massive effect.
Fascinating. I love that. That's such a powerful example, right? Because it's not only like, at first it's like, okay, well, what are we really trying to solve as a business? What is the real goal right now? What is the most important thing we need to do? And then what will provide the greatest amount of leverage, right? And you uncovered that. Very cool. Neat story.
Yeah, and I mean, also there is the element of the employee experience and the culture that you're trying to build. And, many of us are still working in these hybrid environments. And so I love it when a good people program is driving a business metric that the business leaders are bought into and understand that our work can influence that, but that it also is adding, and it's accretive to our employees, right? And it's
Mhm.
adding to the experience.
Mhm.
I alluded to it earlier. A key focus for many of us in people teams, we do get to touch relevant business metrics that have significant implications, right? And that's engagement and attrition. There's so many studies out there around engagement in terms of, driving revenue growth, reducing absenteeism, having increased discretionary effort, meaning people are working more and harder and or whatever. And then, of course, reduced unwanted attrition, right? And so a lot of the things that we have done, because we are an employee success team, right? So I've got employee engagement and DEI and learning and talent development. We have tied it back to the engagement lever, because if we can move the needle on engagement, then we hopefully can retain some of these great people who maybe left and who we didn't want to have leave. So I definitely think that that's a key one. Come with the data, right? Always come with the data. There's so much external data,
There's
but
so much.
I totally agree. Like it sounds like Andrew did some really deep analysis and kind of like knew these ins and outs of the business, the credibility that the HR team is able to garner if we actually bring forward data and insights that come from that data that guide a decision or a direction. That's awesome.
Yeah.
One of the programs that we implemented at Stripe was actually during onboarding, and it kind of ties directly to a lot of this business, bringing the business forward, tying it back to an OKR, which was communicating. So what we found was like the communication style of the culture was very specific, and people were coming in from a bunch of different backgrounds, and it was so applicable to every single role to make sure that every single person could do their job correctly, that we had an hour-and-a-half class during onboarding of how to properly communicate. What do your emails need to look like? What is the tone that works best here? So it was an actual class where people sat down during onboarding to be like, this is the best way to communicate in order to be successful. And it was probably one of the most popular classes and had the most impact for them, ramping more quickly.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. We actually have a question here, so maybe we can double click on that even further. So Brett, thanks so much for sharing this. So how can you most effectively communicate programs initiatives for adoption and stickiness? So, I mean, and you talked about how Stripe had this like really particular way of communicating, but like what if you're even new in the organization and then you've got to come in and launch a new program, right? Like any tips on any toolkit, I guess, on how to really communicate programs?
Oh gosh, there's so many different directions you can go here, but I think one, finding a good ally within the organization that does this really well is probably one of my main tips. Get vulnerable, be like, hey, what is really going to work here? I want to make sure this lands well. So find your ally, find someone who's going to give you feedback really well. And then, make sure that you have the right stakeholders to also give you feedback. So you need to have someone you can be vulnerable with and someone who's going to give you strategic advice. That's a good part of it.
Nice.
I'd add that, hey, if it feels like you're pushing a rock uphill, if it feels like you're getting a lot of resistance from the organization, there's probably a reason for it. So you can co-opt leadership to like speak up for whatever the initiative is. You could, talk about, engagement that you're trying to drive. But if you're like really, truly, firmly rooted in what is the metric that we're trying to drive? Is that revenue? Is that dollar? Is that cost savings? Is that speed on the product roadmap? Then you have immediate credibility and generally not a lot of pushback from the organization. Like it's really obvious. You don't have to make logic leaps to figure out like what the value of this is. And so if you have that metric in mind, you can communicate that early on. You'd say, here's what we're going to do to try to drive increased revenue or faster product roadmap. Here's the activity that we're going to do. And then check in 30 days later. So here's what we did. Here's how the metric moved. 60 days later, 90 days later, here's what we did. Here's how it moved. Here's some other things that we're going to do a little different. So providing those status updates with like the odometer or speedometer of like, or the big thermometer of like raising funds, like here's how we're doing, check in regularly. And that really helps. And it helps people come for the ride too, understanding that it's not just one project that's rolled out perfectly, that you're going to make some tweaks and some course corrections along the way.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think you both, Brittany and Andrew, said it. Some of the interlock with, obviously the business drivers, as well as whether you call it sponsors or champions, et cetera, that are holding the team accountable as well, right? So you are looking at how you're moving the needle over time. And I think so many initiatives in HR, I have at times felt that we try to do some kind of a point solution. And it's a little bit of like this big bang, one and done. And okay, what we've been trying more to do is really align things more to our culture, our values. We have leadership success principles. So things we're doing with the leadership team are all aligned to the leadership success principles. Because it just helps pull that red thread through the programs. And so we can, and of course, if it's related to engagement and survey, we are constantly doing you told us this, here is that, here's that. And then we're going to the business leaders going, we invested in this, and here's what we're seeing for ROI, right? It's kind of like the circular loop.
And just double clipping on that too. It's like that transparency of like, not only like, what are we doing for you employees, but like, what are the leaders doing to address this? What are those conversations that are happening? Because the programs might be different for different levels. So the C-suite might be getting one type of program, VPs are different, and then the employee base gets something very different. But having that transparency to show, hey, we're addressing this at every level. There's not a secret room where conversations are being had, the whole picture. And it kind of demonstrates to everyone, this is important. This is like really important. And we're addressing it from so many different sides.
Yep. Thanks, Jackie. Jackie's got a great point too. It's just the importance of what's in it for me, for participants. So like, I think what I'm hearing is like, the underpinning of what I've heard you share is all like alignment, right? Alignment to the business, alignment to the operating principles, alignment to the values, and then aligning the program. Thanks, Jackie. Plus one to that, aligning it to the participants, like what, connecting the dots for them. Like why should they engage? How does this matter? And what's expected of them as a result?
Yes. I love that. Very true.
Any tactics, like, I guess 2 questions. One, any tactics, because you also brought up that like bringing in getting the right stakeholders or sponsor or what have you, right? Any best advice on actually how to go about that? And when you say like bringing them in, right? What does that mean? Like, are they actually writing the email announcing it? Are they doing an intro video? I mean, like what, can you just bring that alive as to what you think, what does that look like? And how do you go making that ask?
I can chime in here because I think that what Brittany referred to, my team is doing a lot of as well. And when we roll out a program, we have like these kind of what I consider to be like this omni-channel approach, right? We're going to hit everything. We're going to hit the emails. We're going to hit the Slack. We're going to hit the internal web page. We're going to enable managers with a comms kit, which, for better or worse at this point, sometimes, yes, we are ghostwriting a template for them, but we are wanting them to be the ones that say, hey, team, go do this. Because if they're the ones setting the note, other than myself or Natalie or whatever, more likely to get traction and response. And just the communication early, like I kind of call it early, often, and everywhere. Because
Mhm.
if you just drop this thing one fine day and then like right before it's about ready to end, you're talking to them again. And sometimes I will say, my team and I kind of think, oh, I think we're being obnoxious. There's like too much peppering of stuff. But the reality is people miss half of it anyways. So whatever they do get and absorb, it's more is better, in fact. So, and yes, engaging leaders, like, of course, I mean, this is something that I'm sure every single company HR leader does. But next week we're going to launch our engagement survey, and it's the CEO who pushes that out, and then it's going to be all of the leaders, right?
Yeah.
We're doing stuff behind the scenes, and then tactic wise, we're also super into enabling people with tools, frameworks, toolkits. So if you come to a training, we don't have time to put somebody through some big long training for 4 hours, but we can give them more of a micro experience and then provide them with, sometimes there's pre-work, sometimes there's follow-up, or there's just places where they can go and be like, all right, where is that IDP, the individual development plan, and the instructions for preparing myself to have the conversation with my manager?
Yep.
If-
Yeah, we talk about that
Mhm.
all the time. It's like, how do we really meet people where they are and give them what they need when they need it, right? Because we're about application, not just training for training's sake. It was funny
Mhm.
as you were talking, John, about omni-channel communication. I could just see Brittany like lighting up.
I know.
It's like Brittany's favorite thing.
My favorite thing. I always joke that I get a little bit Machiavellian when it comes to like who's going to be the sponsor. I'm like, whose ego would especially be rubbed well in like the C-suite? I'd be like, oh my gosh, you are so good at this thing. This is something you're great at. Would you please launch this thing for me? Or who are the influencers in the organization that I can like, hey, can you please drop into this Slack channel and talk about how excited you are for this program? Or if I've done a pilot ahead of time, bringing that feedback, bringing those like testimonials by specific influential people and pop them in there. So building the credibility, but doing it a little bit like,
A
I
little,
don't know,
little,
a little sly.
yeah.
Yeah.
To that point, a pilot is always a great way to roll out something that might be challenging, that might be controversial, that might have some naysayers. Because then, you're so specifically find a group that is interested in being on the front edge and is more willing to work with you and try it out. And then, assuming it goes well, or if it doesn't, you can tweak some things. Then you have some built-in supporters who can tell the story of, hey, we did this and life was better afterwards.
Yes, totally.
Absolutely. Sometimes you actually create FOMO by the other organizations because there's a leader champion who's passionate about something, they build something cool, and then just more interest kind of expands from there.
Mm.
And sometimes
I-
it's like, nope, not going to do that again, obviously, but the degree of investment and resources expended and so forth, you can kind of contain that much more so than with a big bang company wide.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, sometimes depending on the size of the organization, I've literally been like, hey, 40 people, you are really engaged in our programs. Would you want to be part of a year-long pilot group? You're going to be the first people to try new programs. And I have this like super engaged 20-person group that people have already opted into. And they know that their job is to give as robust of feedback as possible. And they're influential people. So I hit both parts.
Yeah.
It's a fun group.
Nice. And Rob makes a great point, Brittany, as well as we also want, of course, the people who like opt in, right, or are most engaged and excited, just making sure that that group is diverse and not just, sort of the exact point of view or one point of view, so that that feedback is as sort of representative as possible. So appreciate that, Rob. Great point. Excellent.
Yeah, I would just say another time when, because I think a question may have come in earlier about doing gradual pilots versus full blown. And one of the times that makes probably a lot of sense to do more of a narrow scoped launch is if the investment is large. So for example, following our engagement survey, similar to what Andrew has heard from his people, we heard the same thing. We need more learning and development. We want more career, growth and promotions and conversations. So we wanted to try Udemy, which we did do. And we're about, I don't know, 6, 9 months into that launch. But we did it into a subset of the company so we could test and learn and not just blow this huge. I mean, I think that's probably what most would do there. But it's cool because you can kind of kick the tires on, the program, how to run it, what we're learning in terms of driving more adoption, and figure out who the champions are, where we can get testimonials. And we probably will continue with it and expand, because we've been able to kind of harness the strength and the goodness of it. And it's all being discussed in my the CHRO's QBR meetings, and the business is watching like, okay, was that investment? Seems like it's panning out.
Thanks, John, and good memory. Yeah, we had a question come in. I'm just sharing with everyone. And then Stephanie, thanks for your question. We'll definitely get to that. Does anyone else want to share what other factors they've used when considering whether you determine whether, to determine whether you roll out something gradually or you go for a big bang?
I think people, team readiness, resources. Like we've done career architecture over, I don't know how many stages, because we can't scale to do career architecture all at once. Same with things like pay transparency. It's going to be something that's going to happen over time, even though the business might all want it at once. We're going to have to prioritize. What are the critical talent groups? What are the roles that have the most heft in the headcount, et cetera? So I think if HR resourcing, you can take things chunk at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, it seemed like you had something you were going to share.
Yeah, maybe I'm just summarizing and restating. So like when would you parse something out or pilot? It would be when there's high level of investment. It's difficult to deliver. You may not have all the resources available, and or when there is some resistance or likelihood of something being controversial. That might lead you to doing something other than a big bang.
I was going to pop in risk. What is the risk assessment for this program? So there's certain things you might want to be like, you know what, this is going to be a little bit out there, a little bit risky. We think it could be really great, but it could fall flat. Like I have definitely piloted, different learning and development programs where after the pilot, I'm like, nope, this was the wrong choice. Everybody hated it. And it was a surprise. And that was actually a very good piece of feedback that we received.
Great. Stephanie popped a question here, which is kind of fun to answer. What's your favorite program you've developed and launched in your career?
I can think of one. I'd
All
love
right,
to.
let's hear it.
So way back in the day, I was at Washington Mutual, rest in peace. It doesn't exist anymore. And it used to be the largest savings and loan, largest thrift. Yeah, WAMU, the power of yes. I was a senior HR business partner. I had a group of about 2,500 employees across fulfillment centers, and they did refinances for people's home mortgages. And we were contemplating how to increase revenue. And the approach that I proposed was through improving the skills of the sales managers, not frontline sales, but like what can we do to more directly touch I think the population was 50 to 100, frontline managers of, mostly inside sales teams. And maybe I thought of it because of the pilot situation. So the senior leadership was so bought into this. They're like, yes, of course, we've got to do something for the sales managers. And I said, okay, let's do that. But we're only going to do this region, one of 6 geographic regions. And they're like, no, we need to do it for, okay, we'll do 2. Because we really need to know, is this working or is it not? Because we know not everybody's on board. And those managers were already feeling really stretched. This is more time, it's money to travel, they're going to be in training. There's some, other things involved in like doing their day job. Like there's some incremental stuff. So let's actually try to prove the effect. And so by running a pilot with 2 out of 6 regions, we're able to show that those regions improved their performance, their sales performance over a 6-month time period. And then we rolled it to the whole group. And that was probably the best example of a real A/B test. And of course, like the market changed and people changed and all sorts of other stuff changed along the way. But we were doing it with a large enough group that we were able to actually demonstrate that like this had an effect. And I'm really proud of that.
As you should be. That's pretty amazing. That's cool. That also helps answer Judy's question, maybe. Well, Judy's was, I'll come back to you, Brittany. How do you know when a program design is good enough and ready to start piloting? Oh, design, progress versus perfection. Sorry, I thought that was when do you know a pilot is good enough? When do you know the design is even good enough to ready to start piloting? Interesting question.
I mean, definitely gathering data, input, external data, right? Always great to try to benchmark, try to see what other best in class companies that you would like to compare yourself to, like what's going on out there in this realm. But then also getting stakeholder internal feedback. And we started doing that at my current company, Sysdig. It helps us. Before we like finalize like what we're going to do, like we just did this mid-year career conversations and there were brief questionnaires. We worked with about 10 leaders, cross-functional, across the globe, and said, here's a couple of different versions of this. Which one do you think flies best? Let's make sure we're keen on, the geographic culture differences, et cetera. So involving others. And then by the way, when we roll it out, we always go, we worked with some of your colleagues to help design this. And we just lump them into it because it just builds a little bit more credibility. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. You're going to learn along the way. I think testing and learning and evolving as you go forward is totally part of it. We all kind of live in this agile world where you're going to keep improving and honing and refining, hopefully not wholesale, but iteratively, it's okay. If you take on feedback and say, we listened, we heard you, we're going to adjust this, that's also a little bit of goodwill that you get as well.
Thanks, Jonna. Okay, Brittany, did you have a favorite people program that you've watched that you wanted to share?
Oh gosh.
Where you were going? Looked like you had something you wanted to share.
Yes. Well, I'm a big fan of employee engagement surveys. It was one of my first, when I was very early, it was one of my first programs where we had 100 people in the company. We're going to bring on Culture Amp. So I was asked to kind of work on it and bring it together. And I worked on it for a couple years. And my job at that time was to get really good at things and then give it away to someone who would do that thing full time. So I worked on employee engagement surveys for a couple of years. And it was just so much fun to try to get those results in and to make it successful, and also to build the plans for the next 6 months of like, all right, what are the 3 things we're going to focus on for the next 6 months? And it really helped me also thinking about our current programs of how you measure and how you can use that back end systems to bring in the information that you have about employees of what programs they've participated in and kind of seeing how their engagement has changed over time. So those types of programs are just chef's kiss. Love them.
Nice. Okay. Am I allowed to answer one question? Stephanie, I want to answer your question because I think there's hopefully I think this can apply to a lot of programs if you're launching a program. So we launched a program with a client who their challenge was they essentially, like everybody, they ran a performance review and everyone meets expectations. Of course, everyone's not meeting expectations, right? And so basically their performance review process wasn't really productive. They would give projects to people, but they didn't know if they were necessarily going to happen, right? They were not proactive about giving feedback. And so they brought us in, we set clear expectations for managers. Like one of them was like, you need to give direct feedback. That's an expectation and you need to, receive it well, what have you. There was one pillar was all about operationalizing feedback. And so what we did is we trained in a workshop, we trained all so those that are managers, right? And then the managers that we did is we asked them, we have micro learning content and each video has a discussion guide and a facilitator guide. So after we trained and, like your kind of classic interactive workshop, lots of practice, right? We gave them the video that corresponded. They went and watched it during their regular team meetings and they watched the class together and then they're like, we need to give each other more feedback. Like this is part of the culture. This is how we're all going to get better. And so they came up with ways to like, okay, how can we do that as a team? And everybody came up with different ways depending on with the intact team. But within 6 months, the CEO saw a 48% month over month gain in revenue. So we saw the business outcome, right? But the behaviors that he observed were one, there was people didn't get it within 6 months, people no longer got just meets expectations. And the conversation was much more rich in terms of the dialogue during calibration. And people were actually happier, even though they got lower ratings, because they were getting actionable feedback. So I think the reason I picked this to share is that I think there is a ton of power in figuring out how you can roll out a program actually at a scale, at a micro level, where that commitments, where there's just like a deepened level of accountability. So I think why that program worked is because the manager went and sat with their team, watched the content, they had a common language, and they talked together about what could they put in place. And because they're a team and they meet weekly and they see each other, right? They can very easily check in on how things are going. And so I just, and yeah, I encourage you to think about, like, yes, we're always thinking about scale and how do we make this scale at large, but also think about what's the unit, how can you break down the unit of impact small enough so that there's a deep level of accountability? So thanks, Stephanie, for letting me share. Okay. All right. Let's see real quickly here. I'd love to just run one more poll because I'm curious. We went very broad, like lots of people are launching new programs, but I'm curious to see what type of people program. So I'm going to launch this poll and let's just see what kind of program are you launching right now? Is it an employee engagement survey, performance reviews? That makes sense. It's quite timely. Management training, career laddering, maybe compensation, promotion cycle. That can happen at the end of the year, DE&I. So just curious, if you don't mind popping in your answer and I'll share the results. What are we launching?
We're probably entering budget season.
Yes.
About workforce planning is hopefully starting
on the radar. Yeah.
around now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Benefits.
seeing
Just
so
got
much
our
manager
payment.
training.
Benefit time. Yes, exactly. If you need manager training, we are here to help.
Yeah.
Okay, great. People are still coming in.
Yeah, open enrollment's coming up.
Yeah, yes, we need to deal with that. Brilliant. Okay, I'll give it one more second. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll now. All right, let's see what we have here. Okay. Well, manager training and performance reviews are the clear winners. Okay, excellent. Well, it is it's great to see the investment in people. That's awesome. What I guess given that that's where our audience is focused on right now, anybody have any particular tips when they think about management training or performance reviews when you think about launching those programs?
I have one tip for performance reviews, and it's something that's been learned over time and maybe not always heeding my advice that I'm going to give right now, which is every cycle we roll out performance management, we can't change it. The business does not appreciate that we change things every single time. So we're moving away from that, but what I discovered coming into startup land and, we're shrinking the tech stack and we're moving from this tool to that tool and consolidating tools, or, new leadership comes in and they want to ditch the 9 block and so some of this stuff is a little bit outside of our control, but what to me it means, back to the question about stickiness, is really, really get aligned on philosophy and what the inputs are, what the outputs are, and what the expectations are going to be for the roles that need to be played in this thing. Because I think performance management has become, it's just a little bit fraught at times, and it's changed so much, right? I mean, we all remember when we were in that era where all the ratings went away and then the shadow rating system was cropping up in the background. And now I think people agree, that there are ratings, but I think just really philosophically interlocking with the leadership, and at least the last 2 companies I've been at, the CEOs have been very keen to ensure that, we're a performance driven culture. We want to drive differentiation. We want to disproportionately reward top players. We want to help up or out those who aren't converting, et cetera. If you don't have a business leader who's really driving it, sometimes these programs flail too. And so I think you've got to just figure out what's the most simple, repeatable thing that we're not always innovating on.
Simple.
Simple, short, but meaningful. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. Anything else? Andrew, thanks for sharing some resources. It looks like you put something in the chat. Josh had a great point. It's just show an example, right? Like show best practices, make what good looks like really real and tangible. Excellent.
It's a great advice.
Yep. Great.
Almost like a rubric for a performance review.
Yes. Excellent. You know, I think too, I mean, from just to answer the setting, when you're launching management training programs, and just also, I mean, I think like one of the things that keeps coming up throughout this entire webinar is alignment. And I think one way to articulate that alignment or create that alignment when you're launching these programs too is just expectations. Like the clearer you can be about like, here's what we expect of managers, here's why, here's how this is going to drive the business results, or here's how it's going to drive retention. It's just the more we can really make that really clear. People want to do well, right? Like they're very motivated. People work very hard. Like they want to be successful. And so I think the more that we can just be clear about what success is at this company, right? What that looks like, what it doesn't look like, what a successful performance review looks like, what it doesn't look like. I think it's just really, really helpful because the motivation's often there. We have to help connect the dots.
Yeah, Lindsay, to that end, and boy, just like double underlining the keep it simple, ensure that you're focused on value. I see a lot of HR professionals roll out the playbook, roll out like it is a best practice to have competencies and a career ladder and 360s and a self-review and.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not a best practice to do all the stuff. If your organization is rapidly evolving, still searching for product market fit, people are burning the candle at both ends, like these really intensive processes grew up in mature, successful, high margin, profitable enterprises like Google. Google has the maturity, scale, and profit margin to have really complex, really detailed processes. Startups, many of you work at startups, keep it simple, right? What works for Google will probably blow you up and your organization up. And so like be really thoughtful about like what value are we getting for the extra thing? And like, yes, people want the feedback until they get it. What they really want is the promotion or the pay increase. And so like really think about like what is essential, what is value added, and the trade-off is the time and the political capital along the way to get it rolled out. So you don't necessarily have to go all the way to the IDEO, like the design thinking and start from ground zero. But like I would strongly encourage hold on to simplicity for as long as possible and only add very sparingly.
That's good.
Totally agree. And one of the piece of advice I got from an old manager was like, don't reinvent the wheel. Your network is your net worth, right? So go find the people in your network, get advice, figure out what other people are doing. But I love what you just said is simplicity, because we've all been there where we get like 10 to 15 requests for feedback at performance time, and it just destroys your calendar.
And I know the second most popular was on manager development programs. That's always, it's huge. But from my perspective, and I think many of you would agree, the role the manager plays has a huge impact and influence on the employee's experience and on their commitment and just the feel that they have day in, day out working for the company. So I am a fan of investing in manager capabilities. I also think we have to keep that somewhat simple and bite-sized, snackable, whatever you want to call it, too, at least in the environments that I'm in. I remember being at Cisco and they would have these like 1 week residential leadership programs. And I'd be like, what? And the business would always complain, like, I don't have a week to go do this. Well, at Cisco, they maybe did, but not at SysDig. They do not. And so we have to be like, meet the business where they are. But definitely investing in leader development manager skills is important.
Here.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna do our last, oh, hold on, I've messed this up. Oh geez, did I not share those? Or maybe I've messed something up. This is, okay, here we go. Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody can get to their next thing in time. So we've got one last poll here that I think I just launched. Yeah, so just want to as we wrap up here, just offer, as you're thinking about manager development programs, if we can be of help at all. If you want to, you heard from Brittany, if you want to meet with her and talk about like how to set that up, she's got tons of advice. And if there's anything we can do to support you at all, I just also want to like come back to what I stated, is that I just one, like, thank you for all the work you're doing as a people leader. You really are the heart of companies. And I think that I just have empathy for just like how public and how visible it is to launch a program, and how, and you know, how much you want it to go well. So just please know that we are rooting for you. We are here for you. And I really want to thank Brittany and Andrew and Jonna for sharing all of their great tips. It was really great to hear about like the framework that you can, as you go to design something, really thinking about that alignment, really thinking about like, what are we trying to do as a business? What is the core business problem we are solving? And make sure that that is your true north, as opposed to sort of getting something, some pet project that you want to do and trying to figure out, you know, how to connect to it. So just thank you so much for creating the time, for being so engaged, and thank you to our awesome panelists. And if we can support you at all, we are here for you.
Awesome. Thank you. It was fun and really enjoyed it.
Fun. Yeah, same.
All right. Well, thank you
Good to
so
meet
much.
you all.
Everyone.
Thanks.
All right. You take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. All right. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. No, went well. Thanks.
Ooh.
And we'll catch up with you soon, guys. Okay.
Awesome.
Bye.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye.